Chapter 1663. There were many restrictions on the Divine Seal Decree, because most of the people on the Divine Seal Decree had suffered calamities in the past. Even if they left the Divine Seal Decree in the future, there would still be many potential troubles. After the Lunarwood Wolf escaped the restraints of the God-rank chart, it actually unexpectedly broke through the origin heavenly tribulation and ascended to the golden immortal realm, and it could be considered to be a miracle. After all, he did not become a grand heavenly immortal by cultivating the heretic path. Mu Jia and the others, who were famous in the same generation as him, and had never been on the investiture of the gods, were still at the grand virtual immortal realm. Just now, he had appeared with the Bull Demon King, Qiu Immortal, and other great demons in an attempt to fight for the Buddha's Saraira. After that, Mahamayuri arrived and wiped out the demons. Like the other great demons, the Kuei-Wood Wolf could not withstand Mahamayuri's might. Later, Nie Jingshan and the demons of the 9 underworlds appeared. The Rock of 10,000 Cloudy Miles also arrived and seized the Buddha's Saraira. After Mahamayuri left, the Kuei-Wood Wolf also retreated with the other great demons. In front of a top powerhouse like Mahamayuri, the Kuei-Wood Wolf was naturally not very eye-catching. However, Yin Zhaoge had long since noticed him. Long ago, before the Great Calamity, when Yin Zhaoge had still been in the martial repository of the Heavenly Court's Divine Palace, he had heard that the Kuei-Wood Wolf of the Heavenly Court's 28 lunar constellations possessed a soul-shattering jade. At that time, Yin Zhaoge had not taken this news to heart at all. However, with the current strength of his soul and memory, any news that he had heard or experienced would leave a mark in his heart. The so-called forgetting was just in case. When Yin Zhaoge had to treat Yu Yi, the mention of the soul-shattering jade immediately reminded him of the past. Sadly, there had been no news of the Kuei-Wood Wolf at that time. Yin Zhaoge had also thought that he had long since perished in the Great Calamity. Therefore, he had always been searching for the soul-killing jade through other means. Now that the Kuei-Wood Wolf had reappeared, Yin Zhaoge naturally targeted him. Although he couldn't be sure if the Soul Realm Jade in the Kuei-Wood Wolf's possession was still there, compared to searching for a needle in a haystack, this was undoubtedly a more reliable clue. Therefore, although he and Feng Yunxing had gone to chase after Nie Jingshan, he had already contacted the North Ocean clone to secretly follow the Kuei-Wood Wolf. Has he returned to the Astro Mountain's starry seas? Feng Yunxing asked. The corners of Yin Zhaoge's mouth arched slightly upwards. No. When Feng Yunxing heard this, a smile appeared on her face. If the Kuei-Wood Wolf returned to the Astro Mountain's starry sea and hid himself, Yin Zhaoge wouldn't be able to find him directly. The orthodox Taoism's living environment was different from before. It was much more relaxed. Even if he were to openly pay a visit to the Astro Mountain's starry seas, it was not entirely impossible. But if one wanted to obtain the soul-killing jade, it was equivalent to going to someone's door to beg for help. It was very easy to be manipulated. At that time, the other party would call out prices all over the place, and Yin Zhaoge and the others wouldn't be able to bargain back, being too passive. Therefore, if there was a way to come into contact with the Kuei-Wood Wolf in private, while also keeping the situation under control and not spreading, it would naturally be better for Yin Zhaoge and the others. The Kuei-Wood Wolf is currently paying attention to the battle between the blessed lands of the White Lotus and the Immortal Court, explained Yin Zhaoge. Due to the relationship between the Orthodox Taoism and the 9 underworlds, the demon race and the Western Pure Lands had their reservations. Hence, they didn't easily clash with each other. However, the blessed lands of the White Lotus and the Immortal Court's war had been closely monitored by the Buddha lineage and the demon lineage. Their respective experts were stationed at the front lines to oversee and deal with any unexpected situations. At present, it seemed that the Kuei-Wood Wolf was one of the great demons in charge. Let's observe for now. There's no hurry to come into contact with him, said Yin Zhaoge. Although it was rather secretive, Yin Zhaoge and the roving Jade Heavens people had been searching for the soul-seen jade, blood cord stone marrow, aura ocean essence, and other treasures. If the demon race purposely set up a trap, Yin Zhaoge and the others wouldn't dare to step into it. As such, Yin Zhaoge wasn't in a hurry. Instead, He let the North Ocean clone secretly follow the other party, while he and Feng Yinsheng brought the Green Lotus flag back to seek Sua Mingzhang's help. I'll leave it to you. Feng Yinsheng nodded. The three stood under the Tsanghua Divine Tree and looked at the Green Lotus flag in Sua Mingzhang's hands. The stains on it were slowly fading away. This wasn't something that could be done in an instant. Even with Sua Mingzhang's capabilities, he had to plan for it slowly. Fortunately, Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yinsheng weren't in a hurry. They discussed the Dao with Sua Mingzhang while waiting for further news from the North Ocean clone. The North Ocean clone's current location was already very close to the universe void, where the blessed lands of the White Lotus and the Immortal Court heretics were fighting. He didn't revert to his human form. Instead, he transformed into a great demon and hid within the dark void. The golden body of the great sage had been affecting the North Ocean clone for the past few years. As a result, Yin Zhaoge's clone's cultivation was in a strange, blurry state, just like Xuefei and Pan Pan. As such, when he transformed into the demon race's appearance, even the grand heavenly realm demon race great sages wouldn't be able to detect his presence. Of course, he wanted to stay away from those demon race great sages and didn't loiter in front of them. If he stayed too close to them, he might still be exposed. As such, it wouldn't be that convenient for him to monitor the Kuei-Wood wolf. However, the other party didn't seem to have anything special about him. He didn't purposely hide his tracks and acted normally. This allowed Yin Zhaoge's North Ocean clone to follow him. From the looks of it, there doesn't seem to be anything special. Is it because the demon race doesn't know that we're looking for the soul-shattering jade? Or they don't know that the Kuei-Wood wolf possesses the soul-shattering jade? Yin Zhaoge pondered. This wasn't entirely impossible. The Kuei-Wood wolf had left the Heavenly Court's divine palace and joined the Astro Mountain's starry seas. He didn't need to report all of his possessions to the Astro Mountain's starry seas. If the demon race within the Astro Mountain starry seas didn't know about the soul-shattering jade, it wouldn't be surprising if no one knew about it after that. To the orthodox Taoism that wanted to heal Yu Yi, the soul-shattering jade was very important. However, to others, including the Kuei-Wood wolf, even though this treasure was rare, it wasn't some heaven-shaking treasure. It was an item whose value was determined by its demand. I can only hope that the soul-shattering jade is still in his hands, or at least he knows its whereabouts. Yin Zhaoge thought. While paying attention to the Kuei-Wood wolf's movements, he was also observing the battle between the blessed lands of the White Lotus and the Immortal Court. In the past, Sua Mingzhang and Yin Zhaoge had dealt a heavy blow to the Immortal Court. However, the heretics' speed of replenishing their experts sure is fast. Yin Zhaoge walked around the vicinity and realized that almost 200 years had passed. In the grand virtual immortal realm, the Immortal Court's vitality, that was damaged in the past, had already recovered by a large margin. Only, in the grand heavenly immortal realm, the Immortal Court had lost many experts. It wasn't something that could be replenished in just a few hundred years. Overall, the blessed lands of the White Lotus still had the upper hand. They were the ones who started this war. Under the situation where the demon race and the Western Pure Lands rarely participated in the war, the blessed lands of the White Lotus had the upper hand. However, the Immortal Court wasn't completely helpless. As the North Ocean clone was observing, he suddenly realized that his main target was the Kuei-Wood wolf. Remember the mobile website, M. Chapter 1664. Yin Zhaoge's North Ocean clone noticed that the Kuei-Wood wolf suddenly broke away from the other demon race and headed towards another direction alone. There were only a limited number of demon sages keeping watch here. Although the Wood Wolf of Kuei had just ascended to the grand heavenly realm, its strength was extremely outstanding. It was normal for it to act alone, and the other great demons did not ask about it. Yin Zhaoge did not suspect anything. It was just that he would naturally have to follow the other party closely. The Northern Ocean clone's expression did not change, as he too changed his position. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, he did not follow the Kuei-Wood wolf too closely, but he could still ensure that he would not lose track of the Kuei-Wood wolf. Fortunately, the Kuei-Wood wolf didn't seem to want to do anything shameful, so it wasn't very vigilant about the surrounding environment. On the contrary, His guard seemed lower than usual, as if he was distracted by something. This caused the originally unsuspicious Yin Zhaoge to instead feel interested. He first paid special attention to his surroundings and did not find anything out of the ordinary. From the looks of it, the other party did not discover anything wrong with him and deliberately set him up. Now that the Kuei-Wood wolf was alone, it seemed like a good time to come into contact with it. However, Yin Zhaoge was currently more interested in the Kuei-Wood wolf's movements. If there was really an additional gain, then it would undoubtedly be more beneficial to him when he came into contact with the Kuei-Wood wolf in the future. The Kuei-Wood wolf very quickly halted as Yin Zhaoge appraised it carefully. The conflict between the blessed lands of the White Lotus and the Immortal Court was no longer the usual small-scale skirmishes. Instead, it was an all-out war after 100 years. As a result, the battlefront between the two sides stretched on for a very long time and involved a lot of people. They opened up many battlefields and fought earth-shattering battles at the same time. As the blessed lands of the White Lotus had the upper hand and initiated the attack, the flames of war mainly threatened the Immortal Court. The group of great demons, including the Wood Wolf of Kuei, as well as the Buddhist Bantis of the Western Pure Lands, didn't directly participate in the battle. Most of them were observing from the sidelines. After a small number of conflicts broke out, they quickly calmed down. The Kuei-Wood wolf I was specifically approaching one of the battlefields where the outer path was fighting. This was one of the 3,000 immortal realms of the Immortal Court. The two heretic sects had fought endlessly against the few worlds in this immortal realm, and they were in a state of entanglement as they fought each other and refused to give up an inch of land. If he had never been here before, the Immortal Court itself shouldn't have attracted his attention. Yin Zhaoge looked at the Kuei-Wood wolf with interest. Then is it because of someone or something here? After standing at the outskirts for a while, he suddenly moved closer. Evidently, he was attracted by an unexpected reason or a sudden discovery. It wasn't because of the matter mentioned by the other demon race in the Astro Mountain's starry seas. Then what could it be? Yin Zhaoge also shifted his gaze towards the immortal realm. As he observed from afar, he pondered. Within the immortal realm, there were a total of 8 worlds. Currently, all of them had transformed into Azura battlefields. A large number of heretic martial art practitioners were fighting within. Their cultivations varied. The warriors with lower cultivation bases were engaged in a large-scale battle in the 8 worlds, exchanging blows with each other. The martial art practitioners with higher cultivations were fighting within the void of the immortal realm. The strongest expert was an Immortal Court sovereign. He was fighting against another Buddhist Arhat from the blessed lands of the White Lotus. Other than that, a few Immortal Court's true immortal emperors were fighting against the blessed lands of the White Lotus's venerable truth. From the perspective of a martial practitioner, from the perspective of strength, Yin Zhaoge did not find much redeeming qualities within. He believed that with the foresight of the Wood Wolf, it wouldn't be attracted by the strength of these heretic profound immortals and true immortals. Yin Zhaoge tried hard to recall the supreme martial art that the Kuei-Wood wolf of the 28 lunar mansions had cultivated in the Heavenly Court's divine palace back then before comparing it with this martial practitioner of the external Tao before him. Still, he had not discovered anyone who was related to the Kuei-Wood wolf's martial art. Since this path was blocked, Yin Zhaoge changed his train of thought as he began paying attention to whether or not that immortal realm contained some unique treasures. Normally speaking, it was not easy to detect hidden treasures. However, since the Kuei-Wood wolf had such a special action, it showed that in the eyes of an expert at his level, this thing was not hidden. While the Northern Ocean clone's cultivation base was lower than the Kuei-Wood wolf's, his current strength was also extraordinary. Yin Zhaoge's discernment ability was even more shocking. Yet even after looking for a long time, he still did not gain anything. Next, Yin Zhaoge considered many other possibilities, eliminating all of them one by one in the end. If the orthodox path cannot be taken, I can only consider some unorthodox paths. Yin Zhaoge secretly curled his gaze refocused on the heretic martial artists who were fighting in the immortal realm. But this time he only stared at the women. Although they weren't of the direct lineage, they could still be considered as Taoism's descendants. We don't owe the three clear lineage. Immortal Qiusho snorted. It's Taoism that owes us. The Wood Wolf of Kuei-sho shook his head. Let's not talk about it anymore. As the two great demons conversed, Yen Zhaoge's North Ocean clone silently adjusted his position. At the same time, he concealed his aura and made himself appear inconspicuous. The Wood Wolf of Kuei-sho's actions seemed to be an insignificant interlude in the battle between the two heretics. His approach only startled a few people, and he retreated further away. To the heretic martial art practitioners who were fighting against each other, he wasn't eye-catching at all. The Immortal Court and the Blessed Lands of the White Lotus had invested a large number of experts into the long battlefront, and they were constantly fighting against each other. The higher-leveled experts restrained each other, while the lower-leveled martial art practitioners controlled the flow of the battle, and so on. If one of the higher-leveled experts gained the upper hand and was able to move around freely, their opponents would naturally suffer. How to deal with such a dangerous situation would test both sides from time to time. Time unknowingly passed. On different small battlefields, there might be fights and pauses. There were times when the battle was intense, and there were times when the situation calmed down. However, from the perspective of the overall battle, the two sides were still fighting intensely. After resting, the martial art practitioners of the two sides would quickly rejoin the battlefield and continue fighting against their enemies. Yen Zhaoge's gaze wandered around the battlefront between the Blessed Lands of the White Lotus and the Immortal Court. After an unknown period of time, his gaze slightly narrowed. The blue-clothed woman, that he suspected to be Hundred Flowers' bashfulness, appeared once again. Previously, she retreated from the battlefront due to her injuries. Now, she seemed to have recovered and rejoined the battle. Yen Zhaoge's gaze subconsciously glanced at the yellow-robed great sage, the Wood Wolf of Kuei. This time, the Wood Wolf of Kuei-sho didn't make any special movements. It stood on the spot without moving. The distance was too far, and the Wood Wolf of Kuei-sho's cultivation was also high. Yen Zhaoge wasn't sure if it had any special movements. However, if the Wood Wolf of Kuei-sho really cared about the blue-clothed woman, Yen Zhaoge believed that with its strength, it would have already discovered the blue-clothed woman. However, it was unknown if it really didn't care about her, or if it was just pretending. Moreover, we will be helping from the side. Immortal Qiusho opened his eyes and looked at the Kuei Wood Wolf in satisfaction. The central Blessed Lands of Saha currently has the upper hand. They should be able to coordinate and send out manpower. You don't have to worry. That's good. The Kuei Wood Wolf silently nodded. He opened his palm, and a ball of radiance flickered in his palm. The flickering radiance seemed like an independent heaven and earth. Within the heaven and earth, a blue-clothed woman was meditating. Her body was covered in radiance imbued with the power of faith. She seemed to be trying to establish a connection with a higher-level Immortal Court bigwig through the radiance, imbued with the power of faith. The radiance was bizarre and profound. The Kuei Wood Wolf couldn't even block it, and had to be handled carefully. Although the blue-clothed woman seemed to be quiet, she had already been causing a ruckus for a long time. Helpless, she couldn't break through the Kuei Wood Wolf's restraints with her own strength. Hence, she gave up on struggling, and tried contacting the outside world instead. Seeing how she was trying to escape from the enemy's clutches, the Kuei Wood Wolf sighed in his heart. Immortal Qiusho still didn't think much of it. However, he didn't say anything else. Instead, he contacted Daolord Luya and the other great demon experts within the Astro Mountain Starry Sea. At the same time, he contacted a Buddha from the Blessed Lands of the White Lotus from the battlefield where the Immortal Court and the Blessed Lands of the White Lotus were fighting. The Blessed Lands of the White Lotus quickly responded, no matter if it was to stabilize the Kuei Wood Wolf or to gain another expert who had pushed open the immortal door. The Blessed Lands of the White Lotus were naturally more than happy to help. However, the incoming manpower caused the Kuei Wood Wolf to frown. Fellow Taoist, don't worry. Give me some time, and I'll guarantee your wife's safety. The Buddha in front of him sat on a white lotus with a solemn expression. However, the Kuei Wood Wolf didn't reply immediately. Instead, he glanced at Immortal Qiushou. "The Dingguang Buddha will definitely not disappoint us," said Immortal Qiushou. The blessed lands of the White Lotus Buddha, who came to assist them, was none other than the Dingguang Joyous Buddha. No matter if it was the Immortal Qiushou or the Kuei-Wood Wolf, they weren't unfamiliar with him. During the ancient era, the three of them had attended lectures under the Taoism's prime clear lineage. However, it was precisely because they understood him too well that the Kuei-Wood Wolf wasn't at ease. If it was anything else, it wouldn't have mattered. However, the 100 Flowers Shameful Buddha's title alone was enough to make him unhappy. Chapter 1670. The Dingguang Joyous Buddha was furious as well. Enlightening Shyness 100 Blossoms wasn't difficult at all. After all, the disparity between their cultivation realms was obvious. However, the Western Pure Lands and the Immortal Court's people had arrived. Since the Kuei-Wood Wolf and Qiushou Immortal were there to handle the situation, the Dingguang Joyous Buddha could just continue with his own matters. Who would have thought that the road to happiness was strewn with setbacks? It just so happened that such a small matter had to go wrong now. The Dingguang Joyous Buddha was shocked to discover that the blue-clothed lady that he had enlightened had undergone a new transformation. The Immortal Court's treasured light imbued with faith power that was gradually dimming had actually regained its original state. The Dingguang Joyous Buddha's heart trembled. He increased his strength and suppressed the treasured light imbued with faith power, turning it back into his own Buddha light imbued with faith power. Yet, as if fortune had arrived at its zenith, the treasured light imbued with faith power suddenly brightened once again, causing the Dingguang Joyous Buddha's previous efforts to go to waste. She did not devour his Buddha light to strengthen herself. Instead, it was more like a cycle. Every time it reached its end, it would start anew. Such a situation immediately attracted the Dingguang Joyous Buddha's attention. To him, it was even more stimulating than the Kuei-Wood Wolf and Shyness 100 Blossoms. Could it be that my central blessed lands of Saha is unable to enlighten the Immortal Court's people? The Dingguang Joyous Buddha's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. If this question was true, the impact it would bring would far surpass the Immortal Court, gaining a few grand heavenly immortals. As a higher-up expert of the blessed lands of the White Lotus, the Dingguang Joyous Buddha was naturally extremely concerned about this. While it was unexpected, he also felt that it was unimaginable. Currently, the two heretic lineages were waging war against each other, and the war had lasted for a certain period of time. The blessed lands of the White Lotus had the upper hand in attacking the Immortal Court's territory. Amidst the conflict, the blessed lands of the White Lotus had also gained some benefits. The martial art practitioners and mortals that were enlightened did not experience anything like the current Shyness 100 Blossoms situation. However, those who were enlightened previously had a rather low cultivation. The Dingguang Joyous Buddha muttered to himself, "Only those who have pushed open the immortal door would behave like this?" He no longer cared about the Kuei-Wood Wolf's thoughts as he started seriously inspecting the blue-clothed lady. The Dingguang Joyous Buddha did not have the time to care about the Kuei-Wood Wolf's thoughts. After a short while, Dingguang Joyous Buddha discovered something. However, once the immeasurable Heavenly Lord lost his patience, he could directly kill Dingguang Joyous Buddha in his current state. Even the Maitreya Buddha would not be able to protect him. As he thought of this, Dingguang Joyous Buddha looked at the blue-clothed lady again, revealing a ferocious gaze. In terms of inner thoughts, it wasn't just the Kuei-Wood Wolf who disliked Dingguang Joyous Buddha. Dingguang Joyous Buddha disliked the Kuei-Wood Wolf even more. During the ancient era, he was a Grand Luo Realm long-eared Dingguang Joyous Immortal, while his opponent was merely a Grand Virtual Immortal. During the Middle Era, he joined Buddhism and became the Dingguang Joyous Buddha. As the Middle Era ended, and he entered this era, the central blessed lands of Saha was in chaos. Buddhism could barely fend for itself, and he was heavily injured by the prime clear bigwigs, causing him to fall from the grand heavenly realm. This fall left him with a deep wound, and Dingguang Joyous Buddha could no longer rely on himself to survive the origin heavenly tribulation. In the end, he was left with no choice but to join the blessed lands of the White Lotus, becoming a heretic and achieving Buddhist enlightenment once more. However, compared to the past, the present was still not as good as the past. As for the Kuei-wood wolf, who had suffered a tribulation and entered the investiture god board, he had left the investiture god board after the great calamity. Now, he didn't even walk on the heretic path and ascended to the grand heavenly realm. Comparing the two, how could Dingguang Joyous Buddha feel at ease? Only times had changed. No matter if he was willing or not, the Kuei-wood wolf had surpassed him, and the Astro Mountain Starry Sea had surpassed the blessed lands of the White Lotus. As such, Dingguang Joyous Buddha quickly adjusted his mentality and cooperated with the Kuei-wood wolf and the horned head immortal. In the end, seeing that he was about to suffer a calamity, Dingguang Joyous Buddha instantly had evil thoughts. If he killed 100 Blossom Shyness, he could sever the immeasurable Heavenly Lord's illumination and escape from his current predicament. At the same time, he could also ensure his own safety, and he wouldn't be killed by the immeasurable Heavenly Lord after he became impatient. Even if he offended the Kuei-wood wolf, the future Buddha would settle the lawsuit with the Eastern monarch Tai. He wouldn't have to sacrifice his life for 100 Blossom Shyness. This woman has yet to lose her primordial Een. I might as well go all the way. As his evil thoughts rose, Dingguang Joyous Buddha's previous apprehensions were all gone. Since he could push the blame to the immortal court and the immeasurable Heavenly Lord, he could just destroy the corpse and get rid of the evidence. Chapter 1671. The Dingguang Joyous Buddha revealed an ominous glint in his eyes. He looked into the distance. There, the Kuei-wood wolf, Xiao Immortal, and other great demons were fighting against the Western Pure Lands Buddhist Bantis. While they were obstructing the Buddhist bigwigs, weren't they being held back by the Buddhist bigwigs as well? The Dingguang Joyous Buddha's Buddha light flickered unstably. The Kuei-wood wolf, who was worried about 100 flowers blushing, immediately noticed it. Although he didn't know the exact situation, the Kuei-wood wolf was also worried. However, with the Buddhist Bantis holding him back, the Kuei-wood wolf couldn't break through the encirclement and return. Seeing this, the Dingguang Joyous Buddha's final worry disappeared. He immediately turned around and looked at the blue-clothed woman. On the other side, a silhouette suddenly appeared by the void. It was faintly discernible, seemingly existing yet not. That silhouette quietly approached the flickering Buddha light. However, at this moment, Yin Zhaoga's North Ocean clone appeared and obstructed the silhouette. Yin Zhaoga looked over and saw a Taoist wearing a crimson robe. His face was blue, and his hair resembled cinnabar. 3 eyes were opened wide on his forehead, and he was riding on a golden-eyed camel. This Taoist held a sword and had 3 heads and 6 arms. His appearance was similar to the Grand Sui Heavenly Lord, Yin Jiao. After seeing his appearance, Yin Zhaoga came to a realization. So it's the pestilence demon, vast heavenly emperor. I've long heard of you. That Taoist's name was Lu Yu. During the ancient era, he was a bigwig of the prime clear lineage. He established his own residence on the 9 Dragons Island, and his name was rather resounding. He possessed various treasures such as the tangible heavenly seal, the plague bell, the fixed plague banner, the plague finger sword, and many others. His strange divine abilities were sharp, and he had made a name for himself during the ancient era. During the investiture of the gods' battle, Lu Yu suffered a calamity and entered the investiture god board. He entered the heavenly court's divine palace and became the lord of the pestilence demon, vast heavenly emperor. During the great calamity, he left the investiture god board. After the immortal court was established, Lu Yu and the smallpox division's righteous god, Yu Hualong, entered the immortal court. He was one of the immortal court's first cornerstones. Currently, he was the immortal court heretic's oldest grand heavenly immortal. He had experienced many battles against the blessed lands of the White Lotus, and his achievements were outstanding. Yin Zhaoga was a little surprised to see him here. After all, the immortal court was currently facing immense pressure from the blessed lands of the White Lotus. The blessed lands of the White Lotus had the spare time to send the Dingguang Joyous Buddha over. However, at this moment, a huge drum suddenly appeared beside Yin Zhaoga. He didn't stop. As he walked towards the Dingguang Joyous Buddha, he casually struck the drum. As the drum resounded, the Dingguang Joyous Buddha was instantly stunned. In the next moment, The 100 Blossoms bashfulness in his hand fell into Yin Zhaoge's grasp. At the same time, the chaotic origin hammer appeared in Yin Zhaoge's hand. With a strike, the Dingguang Joyous Buddha was once again sent rolling on the ground. Chapter 1673. After suffering the chaotic origin hammer's attack, the Dingguang Joyous Buddha wasn't in a good state. His golden body shattered, and his head started bleeding. Fortunately, he had a top-notch Buddhist treasure Kasaya to save his life. Otherwise, he would have been killed on the spot by the hammer. Even so, he was still knocked down. He exhaled more than he inhaled, and was on the verge of death. Yin Zhaoge snatched the 100 Blossoms bashfulness, and kept the chaotic origin hammer. His index and middle fingers formed a sword, and green sword lights emanated from his fingertips, slashing apart the Buddha lights imbued with faith power and treasured lights on the Dingguang Joyous Buddha and the 100 Blossoms bashfulness. The Buddha lights were quickly slashed apart, while the treasured lights imbued with faith power continued to flicker. Yin Zhaoge didn't mind it, because the Kuei-Wood Wolf's figure flashed and arrived in front of him. While being entangled by the Western Pure Lands Buddhist Bantis, the Kuei-Wood Wolf couldn't maintain his omnipresent miraculous state. He finally arrived. His gaze towards Yin Zhaoge was filled with caution. However, when this great demon noticed the 5-colored chi mass that was still wrapped around the 100 Blossoms bashfulness, he was instantly enraged. That was the chi mass formed by the Dingguang Joyous Buddha's joyous Tao. Naturally, the Kuei-Wood Wolf recognized it and knew its usage. He immediately slashed towards the Dingguang Joyous Buddha. How could the Dingguang Joyous Buddha have any room to dodge when he was heavily injured? He was instantly slashed into two. The Buddhist Bantis chasing after him saw this and said, "Ba." Yin Zhaoge waved his hand towards the Kuei-Wood Wolf. "This isn't the place to talk. Yellow-robed great sage, follow me." The Kuei-Wood Wolf hesitated for a moment, and immediately followed. The Buddhist Bantis that were chasing after him hesitated instead. Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yunxing shared the same fate. Feng Yunxing didn't appear, which made them even more worried. They didn't dare to chase after them recklessly. Who knew if a fatal slash would suddenly descend from the sky without any warning? Even the Horned Head Immortal and the other great demons were filled with hesitation and didn't dare to follow them. Luyu by the side could only watch the North Ocean clone swagger away, disappearing together with Yin Zhaoge and the Kuei-Wood Wolf. The vast heavenly emperor's emotions were complicated, which couldn't be described with words. As for the matter regarding 100 Blossom bashfulness, it was indeed the result of a conspiracy between him and some Buddhist powerhouses. It was the same for the returning Sun Tree and Gu Yuanshan. Naturally, it would be best if the immeasurable heavenly lord could forcefully illuminate a heretic Buddha from the blessed lands of the White Lotus. The other party had the strength to retaliate. Chapter 1674. After keeping the soul-killing jade, Yin Zhaoge looked at the Kuei-Wood Wolf, asking, "Your wife has now already entered the Immortal Court's external Tao. I wonder what you intend to do next." When the Kuei-Wood Wolf heard this, it immediately fell silent. He naturally didn't want to see the 100 flowers shamed into the outer path. No matter if it was the Immortal Court heretics, Buddhism heretics, or the blessed lands of the White Lotus, it was the same. Only comparatively speaking, the blessed lands of the White Lotus were slightly better off. After all, the Kuei-Wood Wolf was currently residing in the demon race, while the blessed lands of the White Lotus and the demon race were allies. Both sides were on the same side. Moreover, as long as the Astro Mountain's starry sea held the upper hand and maintained a dominant position, the blessed lands of the White Lotus would not pose a problem to the Kuei-Wood Wolf. The blessed lands of the White Lotus would not use this to deal with him. That was why he agreed to summon the blessed lands of the White Lotus Buddha to enlighten the 100 Blossoms. But in the end, he killed the Dingguang Joyous Buddha. For the outer Tao, they couldn't afford to lose a Buddha that had ascended to the golden heavenly realm. The reason why the Immortal Court was suppressed by the blessed lands of the White Lotus for so many consecutive wars was due to Sua Mingzhang and Yin Zhaoge killing a large number of Immortal Court heavenly lords. After checking 100 Blossom Shy's soul, Kuei-Wood Wolf also knew that to a certain extent, Dingguang Joyous Buddha, whom he had found to purify 100 Blossom Shy, was actually the one who had been deceived. Hence, he killed the Dingguang Joyous Buddha. Even if the demon race was stronger than the blessed lands of the White Lotus, the Kuei Wood Wolf was in the wrong. Of course, the Dingguang Joyous Buddha's intention to pluck 100 flowers to shame made the Kuei Wood Wolf somewhat reasonable. The final outcome would most likely be an argument between the two sides. In fact, the blessed lands of the White Lotus might even admit that they were unlucky. After all, compared to the entire alliance formed by the two sects, the Wood Wolf of Kuei, the great sage of the demon clan, had a higher status than the Dingguang Joyous Buddha. He could still bring the 100 Blossoms' bashfulness back to the Astro Mountain's starry seas, and mend his relationship with the blessed lands of the White Lotus. He could also request other bigwig Buddhas from the blessed lands of the White Lotus to enlighten the 100 Blossoms' bashfulness once more, eliminating any future troubles from the immortal court. With his current situation, barring any major accidents, he wouldn't be forced to abandon the demon race and join the Western Pure Lands and the immortal court, unless the demon race and the blessed lands of the White Lotus couldn't resolve the issue of 100 Blossoms. The souls themselves emitted a sense of tranquility, purity, and clarity. However, the jade was filled with a baleful aura. While it seemed contradictory, it was harmonious and unified. Within the dark purple jade, it appeared exceptionally beautiful. It couldn't be any better. Feng Yunxing let out a long sigh. Let's hurry to the crimson radiance in Yang Heaven. Senior apprentice sister, you has been waiting for too long. Yen Zhaoga nodded. Yeah, let's go. The two went to the crimson radiance in Yang Heaven and entered the roving jade heavens. After receiving the news, Long Xingquan, Gao Xuebua, and the others were naturally overjoyed. They came out to welcome Yen Zhaoga and the others, bringing them to Yu Ye's resting place. Even Gao Qingxian, who was in seclusion, was alerted and exited seclusion in advance for her granddaughter. The group gathered within Yu Ye's room. Yen Zhaoga retrieved the soul scene jade, blood cord stone marrow, spirit ocean's essence, and other treasures. Then he set up a formation. After the formation was set up, Yen Zhaoga inspected it and sent the currently unconscious Yu Yi into the formation. Within the formation, rays of radiance surged and enveloped Yu Ye's body. The formation patterns and talismans seemed to have condensed into materialized symbols and diagrams, which were engraved within the void. They automatically formed circles of light that were hard for ordinary people to understand. The ribbon-like streams of light started surrounding Yu Ye's body. During this process, the dark red liquid that resembled a rock on the outside, but contained deep blood marrow-like dark red liquid within rose into the air. It enveloped Yu Ye's entire body and seeped into her skin through her pores. The dark purple soul scene jade transformed into a ray of purple radiance and slowly sunk into Yu Ye's Naiwan palace. Under the formation's influence, the spirit ocean's essence silently shattered. Then, it turned into wisps of white smoke and was absorbed into Yu Ye's body through her breathing. After being processed by Yen Zhaoga's formation, the other treasures were also absorbed by Yu Ye's body at the same time. The ribbon-like streams of light continuously revolved. In the end, when the other treasures were refined and gradually absorbed by Yu Yi, the revolving speed of the streams of light slowed down. They gradually transformed into specks of light dust and were absorbed into Yu Ye's body. Chapter 1676. Currently, many forces were fighting against each other, and the situation was chaotic and ever-changing. This gave Kong Xian a chance to act. Under most circumstances, as the number one person below the Dao realm, Mahamayuri had the capability to benefit from both sides. However, it's getting harder and harder for him. Yen Zhaoga said, the demon race obtained a Buddha's Saraira. If they intend to control Mahamayuri, it might not be that Saraira. He looked at Feng Yunxing and slowly said, if I'm not wrong, the price Mahamayuri paid for helping the Western Pure Lands twice was 2 Buddha's Saraira. In other words, Mahamayuri has at least 2 Buddha's Saraira in his possession. Yen Zhaoga raised his brows slightly. If the Elder Lord's information is true, there should be a total of 5 Buddha's Saraira. Feng Yunxing understood and said, Other than the 2 Buddhist Saraira that the Western Pure Lands offered, we don't know if Mahamayuri had any other Buddhist Saraira. Yes, other than the 2 Buddhist Saraira, and the one obtained by the demon race, there are still 2 Buddhist Saraira missing. Yen Zhaoge answered. If these 2 Buddhist Saraira were already in Mahamayuri's possession, the one obtained by the demon race would be the 5th Buddhist Saraira. It's also the only Buddhist Saraira that hasn't been obtained by Mahamayuri. With that, the Eastern Emperor Tai, Tao Lord Luya, and the other demon race bigwigs would forcefully occupy this Buddhist Saraira. The value of this Buddhist Saraira would skyrocket, and it wouldn't be something that Mahamayuri could exchange for just one Buddhist Saraira. Putting aside the Eastern Emperor Tai, Tao Lord Luya would definitely hold on to the Buddhist Saraira tightly and wouldn't exchange it for Mahamayuri no matter what. Otherwise, he would have to face an extremely strong opponent like Mahamayuri in his path of ascending to the Tao realm. Currently, no one could confirm the opportunity that Kong Xian needed to ascend to the Tao realm. However, the upcoming situation that originated from the 9 underworlds was extremely important to all of the grand heavenly immortals who were preparing to ascend to the Tao realm. No matter how the 9 underworlds changed, whether it changed for the better or for the worse, the objective foundation was there. For such a huge existence to undergo a huge change, it was a great tribulation that was hard to come by in 10,000 years, a great opportunity. If he wanted to break through to the Tao realm, he had to take this hurdle seriously. The fewer the competitors, the greater his chances. He believed that apart from Tao Lord Luya, Dipankara Ancient Buddha, Great Taoist Master Xiandu, and the others would not be happy to see Mahamayuri gather all 5 relics. But there is a problem here. Yen Zhaoge lightly rubbed his temple. Luya, or should I say, the Buddhist Saraira that the demon race currently possesses, is it the last one for Mahamayuri? Chapter 1677. Although she usually seemed a little slow, Yu Ye's willpower wasn't weak. Just as Long Xueji, who watched her grow up, had said, she was much stronger than most people. However, on the other hand, being strong and resolute sometimes meant stubbornness and stubbornness. Being strong and stubbornness were naturally different. However, under certain circumstances, the boundary between the two might be blurred. Although Yu Ye's personality was calm and casual in her daily life, she had always been firm and unyielding when it came to learning martial arts and practicing the sword. She was able to endure loneliness and was able to endure hardship. She didn't care about many things. However, whenever she did, her heart would always be deeper than others. For example, she possessed the heaven-containing purified soul. Although she seemed to be daydreaming, she would be extremely focused when practicing martial arts. As such, the calmer she appeared, the more worried Long Xueji, Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yunxing were. With Yu Ye's personality, it would only signify intense waves within her heart. Let's go take a look. Yin Zhaoge sighed. Long Xueji nodded silently and brought Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yunxing back to the cave manor. Currently, Yu Yi was sitting quietly. She asked Gao Qingxian, "Grandmother, is the Divine Mother currently in charge of the Immortal Extermination Formation?" "That's right," Gao Qingxian answered. "The Divine Mother and Cloudy Sky Queen have been taking turns in charge of the Immortal Extermination Formation, in exchange for our Taoism's freedom." Yu Yi nodded slightly. When she saw Yin Zhaoge and the others walking in, she said, "Junior apprentice brother Yin, thank you for helping me all these years." "Don't be so courteous, senior apprentice sister Yu," said Yin Zhaoge softly. Yu Yi looked at him. "Grandfather and grandmother have just told me about what happened during these years. They mentioned junior apprentice brother Yin and Yunsheng. Previously, did you too?" As she said that, ripples finally appeared within her originally calm gaze. "Yes, we met senior apprentice brother Nya." Yin Zhaoge remained silent for a while. However, he still nodded. "I've heard from grandfather about how his earlier heaven nascent form would affect his transformation into an extinct devil." Yu Ye's voice was very soft. How does he look like now?" "It's hard to tell," Yin Zhaoge explained. "With the primordial heart devil and other great devils around, even if there's something special about it, it wouldn't easily reveal itself." He looked at Yu Yi, then at Long Xingquan, Gao Qingxian, Long Xueji, Gao Xuebua, and the others? He pondered and said, Actually, I was just talking to Yunxing about how we could interact with the 9 underworlds and probe them. Oh. Yu Ye's eyes suddenly lit up. The expressions of Gao Qingxian, Long Xingquan, and the others immediately turned solemn. While observing Yu Yi, Yin Zhaoge briefly discussed his plans. Finally, he looked into Yu Ye's bright eyes and said softly, Even for you, senior apprentice sister Yu, you'll have to take some risks. If you really come into contact with him, you'll be facing a grand heavenly realm devil lord. The so-called risk did not mean that Nie Jingxian might hurt her. Instead, she might face the bewitchment of a demon sovereign. The slightest flaw in her mind might be magnified. I understand. Yu Yi took a deep breath and slowly said, If I'm not prepared, I won't go. She turned her head and looked at Feng Yunxing. Only, I feel bad asking Yunxing to bear the risk for me. Don't worry, senior apprentice sister Yu. Feng Yunxing smiled. Between the 9 underworlds and me, it's still uncertain who's riskier. Instead, the other party might not agree to it. Yu Yi let out a long sigh and closed her eyes, calming her emotions. Once you're prepared, we'll contact the 9 underworlds. Yin Zhaoge nodded and said. The other party had just woken up. After receiving so much information, she needed time to analyze it. Yin Zhaoge then took his leave. Long Xingquan, Gao Xuebua, and Long Xueji left with Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yunxing, leaving only Gao Qingxian to look after her granddaughter. After exiting, they looked at each other and let out a sigh. Although senior apprentice sister Yu is willing, I, Yin Zhaoge, only hope that senior apprentice brother Nie can repent. I might have acted rashly, so please forgive me. Yin Zhaoge cupped his hands. His words were mainly meant for Gao Xuebua and Long Xueji. To Yin Zhaoge, Yu Yi, and the others, Nie Jingxian might hold a different meaning. However, to the roving Jade Heaven's Jade Clear lineage, he was an outstanding Jade Clear successor. No matter what, Yu Yi was still their blood relative. Nie Jingxian saved Yu Yi, and fell into darkness to save her. Naturally, Gao Qingxian and the others would be grateful for this. It wasn't a problem for them to return the favor. However, they wouldn't be willing to risk their lives to return the favor after saving Yu Yi. Nie Jingxian and Long Xingquan could be considered as fellow disciples. However, Gao Qingxian and her son weren't on the same level. Not to mention, there was still the matter regarding the Vine Sovereign Li Ying. Only, due to Nie Jingxian and Yu Yi, the relationship between them became even messier. What are you saying, Zhaoge? We're all responsible for little friend Nie's matter. Gao Xuebua sighed and said, Now we can only hope for the best. Yin Zhaoge nodded silently. After bidding farewell to Long Xingquan and the others, they left the roving Jade Heavens, leaving Crimson Brightness and Yang Heaven. The couple headed towards the Grand Peace Royal Cliff Heaven. There, Sua Mingzhang was still purifying the green lotus flag. Most of the impurities on the flag had already been cleansed, and it was about to regain its luster. The strength of the primordial heart devil wasn't mainly reflected in its frontal combat ability. Instead, it was because he was practically all-pervasive. At every moment, he was prying into the hearts of all living beings, and it was impossible to guard against him. Under his management, the Nine Nether diverted her attention to guard against the opponents of the other factions, while fighting with perfected Tai and the other mighty figures of the Dao sect. Furthermore, because it was both real and illusory, most of the techniques in the world could not truly harm the primordial heart devil. In that battle back then, if Yin Zhongzi, who had mastered the origin heavenly scripture, had not participated in the battle, the people of the Dao sect might not have been able to severely injure the primordial heart devil. Even so, it cost Yin Zhongzi his life. However, the primordial heart devil was still alive today. Although he had appeared a few times, and his injuries didn't seem to have fully recovered, the primordial heart devil was the most cunning amongst the 9 underworld devils. He was the best at deceiving others. Yin Zhaoge and the others had to be careful. Who knew if that old devil had fully recovered? Several grand heavenly realm pinnacle experts were plotting against the 9 underworlds, while the 9 underworlds were also preparing for war. No one would neglect the existence of the primordial heart devil. The primordial heart devil doesn't matter. May the 3 altars of the ocean gathering divinity recover as soon as possible. Yin Zhaoge cupped his hands towards the true deity Tai. The true deity Tai looked at Neza, who was enveloped by the 9 dragons' divine fire, and revealed a gratified expression. In a few more days, he should have recovered. He might even make it in time for your negotiation with the 9 underworlds. That's for the best. Yin Zhaoge nodded, after temporarily leaving the true deity Tai and Neza in the everlasting cloud vow heaven. Yin Zhaoge and Feng Yinxing returned to the vermilion royal reed heaven. Everyone on the broad Creed mountain let out a long sigh of relief after receiving the news of Yu Ye's awakening. It's good that senior apprentice Sister Yu is fine. Ying Longtu, who had returned to the mountain earlier, smiled joyfully. She could have awakened long ago. Only, we didn't want her to leave any future troubles behind. That's why we used treasures like the soul-killing jade and blood cord stone marrow. Yin Zhaoge smiled. Everyone has been working hard for the past few years. However, if it weren't for junior apprentice brother Ying, we might not have been able to welcome the true deity Tai and the 3 altars' great divinities back. Ying Longtu smiled. Senior apprentice Sister Yu is blessed by the heavens. Congratulations on senior apprentice Sister Yu's awakening. Nine Nether wants to break the seal that suppresses the primordial heaven devil. Oh. Yin Zhaoge and Sua Mingzhang both narrowed their eyes. Although it had been sealed during the immemorial epoch, and had never reappeared, the existence of the primordial heavenly demon still made everyone wary. He was the true leader of the fiendish Tao, the source, the ancestor, the number 1 existence among the 12 devilish gods and fiends, the first ancestral fiend, the leader of all fiends. His original title should have been Primordial Demon. It was only after he was defeated by the Taoism's Jade Clear Grand Master, the primordial heavenly lord of primordial beginning, that he changed his name to Primordial Heavenly Devil. Even so, this number 1 Grand Master of the fiendish Tao was extremely powerful. Even after thousands of years, he was still feared and praised by everyone. Although he had been suppressed by the Primordial Heavenly Lord until now, it was mostly due to him being defeated in the battle for the title of Primordial Beginning. As the victor, the Primordial Heavenly Lord naturally suppressed the Primordial Heavenly Devil. Otherwise, as fellow Tao Realm bigwigs, even if the victor could be determined, how could he be suppressed for so long? After the Primordial Heavenly Lord's transcendence, the difficulty of the Primordial Heavenly Devil regaining his freedom increased. Unlike the great sage equaling heavens who was suppressed by the Tathagata Buddha, everyone was wary of the Tathagata Buddha. With how important the Primordial Heavenly Devil was to the fiendish Tao, the 9 underworld's devils would naturally try to help him break the seal regardless of the consequences. Although the fiendish Tao was often suppressed, there was still the vast freedom Heavenly Devil. However, breaking the seal of the Primordial Heavenly Lord wasn't solely based on one's strength. There were other considerations as well. I see. Yin Zhaoge let out a sigh. The reason why senior apprentice brother Nia entered the fiendish Tao wasn't because of the devil of aged metal, but the Primordial Heavenly Devil. Sua Mingzhang raised his brows. Earlier heaven nascent form? Yin Zhaoge nodded. The earlier heaven nascent form isn't inferior to later heaven. It's the beginning of all things, and it coincides with the primordial peerless form. As such, Nie Jingxin's path of comprehending the secrets of peerless infinity wouldn't be as rough as Yin Tianxia's. If Yin Tianxia or the others didn't have the jade clear primordial heavenly scriptures, peerless heavenly scripture as their foundation, their path would become more and more difficult. The tranquil profound immortal might very well be their end. Cultivating the grand clear Tai fist, or the prime clear chaos extinguishing origin scripture, was another matter altogether. While the principles were the same, it was a different path, which was equivalent to changing one's foundation. Even if Nie Jingxin didn't have the peerless heavenly scripture, it wouldn't be as difficult for him to comprehend the jade illusory peerless infinity sword like others. While it was impossible for him to reach the Tao realm, he had hope of reaching the grand heavenly realm as long as he had the capabilities to do so. His path was correct and smooth. This was one of the miraculous aspects of his earlier heaven nascent form. This was the main reason why he was targeted by the 9 underworlds. The physique suitable for the devil of aged metal's rebirth was merely incidental. This is the 9 underworlds' true plan. Feng Yinxing said faintly. Not only is senior apprentice brother Nya a suitable physique for the devil of aged metal, but he's also a suitable physique for the primordial heavenly devil. Nya Jingxian isn't the first person born with the earlier heaven nascent form. While this physique is extremely rare, it isn't unique in history. Sua Mingzhang said slowly. Why didn't the 9 underworlds do anything before? It seems like this isn't the only condition required for the primordial heavenly devil to break out of the seal. It needs to be close to the doomsday heavenly devil's birth. Feng Yinxing sighed. The end is also the beginning. Sua Mingzhang's expression remained calm. He nodded. I see. It seems like the 9 underworlds is really aiming for the 12 devilish grand formation. The 12 devilish grand formation, Yin Zhaoge said slowly. Everyone is plotting against the 9 underworlds. And the same goes for the 9 underworlds. The moment they are closest to success is also the moment they are closest to failure, and vice versa. Hearing Yin Zhaoge's words, Feng Yinxing nodded. Indeed. From the looks of it, the final conclusion between her and the 9 underworlds would be decided here as well. She already knew that there would be a tribulation, and now, she was slowly getting a glimpse of its true nature. Yin Zhaoge's next words suddenly changed. Everyone is plotting against this. Back then, how many of them knew about your matter and senior apprentice brother Nye's matter? How many of them watched everything happen, and even went along with the flow? His gaze was faint, and a cold intent leaked out. Needless to say, Feng Yinxing and Sua Mingzhang could be trusted as well. Although their current strength was ranked amongst the top of the grand heavenly immortals, they were also chess pieces that had just jumped out of the chessboard like Yin Zhaoge. However, just like Yin Zhaoge, they were chess pieces that had just started jumping out of the chessboard. Even if they were to start their own schemes, they were not the ones who had been scheming for the 9 underworlds all along. Yin Zhaoge's gaze was dim as he looked at the dark boundless void. He didn't know how deeply involved the great Taoist Xian Du was, and how much he knew. However, with the great Taoist Xian Du returning the supreme heavenly devil's authority to the 9 underworlds despite the elder lord's inaction, Yin Zhaoge found it hard to believe that he didn't know anything about the doomsday heavenly devil and the primordial heavenly devil. Whoever was plotting against the 9 underworlds next round wouldn't be able to escape suspicion. At most, it would only be a difference of how deep they were. Would they personally take action, or would they silently allow it? Whether the Southern Extremity Longevity Emperor and the North Star Emperor, who plotted against Jian Shunhua to the 9 underworlds in the past, knew nothing about it. However, on the other hand, if they were also players of chess, what was their motive? Was it to help the great Taoist Xian Du? Or were they plotting against the 9 underworlds next round? Did this mean that under such a low-profile and secretive situation, there were also people nearing the Tao realm, waiting for the final opportunity? Only unlike the Dipankara ancient Buddha, Mahamayuri, Taoist Luya, and the great Taoist Xian Du, they weren't known by others. In order to prevent others from obstructing their path, everyone kept their own path of cultivation a secret. Only none of them were easy to deal with, especially the Tao ancestors. Although most of them wanted to hide it, they were still exposed. However, nothing was absolute in this world. There might be someone who slipped through the net. From the outside, it seemed like there was no way to enter the Tao realm. In fact, only he knew about it. He had even secretly made preparations, and was only left with one last step. Yin Zhaoge sighed and turned his head to look at Feng Yinxing and Sua Mingzhang. A bitter smile appeared on his face. I feel like cursing. I can't help but suspect if the 9 underworlds purposely leaked this information to us, in order to sow discord among us and cause chaos among us. The information was real. It wasn't fake. However, it was precisely because it was real that it had such lethality. Neza didn't look for trouble with others, but he might look for trouble with him. Although Yin Zhaoge still didn't know how the White Xiong died under Neza's fire-tipped spear, this outcome would undoubtedly affect the situation. Regardless of what the Dipankara ancient Buddha was thinking, he couldn't sit still anymore. Regarding the grudges between him and Neza, he was the one who gained the upper hand. He didn't suffer any losses, while Neza was the one who lost out. Naturally, Neza wouldn't forget about it, while the Dipankara ancient Buddha didn't care about it. However, his personal disciple, the White Xiong, had died in Neza's hands. If he didn't accept the challenge, his reputation and prestige would be shaken even further. The situation of the White Xiong and Li Jing were different. Li Jing and Neza had a messy relationship. They were still father and son in name. The conflict between the two could be considered a family matter. If the ancient Buddha Randang stood up for Li Jing because of Neza's patricide, he would actually be the culprit of the human tragedy back then. Other than Neza, everyone had selectively lost their memories. However, now that the White Xiong had died in Neza's hands, the Dipankara ancient Buddha would be forced to accept the challenge. It would be great if they could fight for real. Yin Zhaoge pondered and said, "The sea-calming pearls of the Dipankara ancient Buddha aren't complete. With the strength of the 3 altars, there's a high chance of winning. Even if he loses, his life wouldn't be in danger. The Dipankara ancient Buddha would feel terrible no matter who wins or loses." Chapter 1693. Dipankara ancient Buddha definitely didn't want to fight this battle, if he could avoid it. Perhaps he was happy that the Orthodox Tao sect did not have an expert like Neza, but the ancient Dipankara Buddha never planned to fight Neza one-on-one. After all, Neza was extremely powerful, and he wasn't easy to deal with. More importantly, even if he defeated Neza, the gains would be limited, and the losses would outweigh the gains. However, if the ancient Dipankara Buddha was seriously injured in the process of fighting with Neza, it might affect the game about the 9 nether in the future. Back in the early years of the Middle Era, the ancient Dipankara Buddha, who was already prepared to break through to the Tao realm, had been waiting for this for too long. If he missed this opportunity, he would really go crazy. What was even more worrying was that he did not know when he would get another opportunity. Back then, the battle at the Immortal Extermination Formation was of great importance, so they had to fight for it. Now that he was challenged by Neza, it was obvious that it would cause more trouble. For Orthodox Taoism, if there was a chance to cause trouble for the ancient Dipankara Buddha, they would naturally be happy to do so. However, Yin Zhaoge felt that the ancient Dipankara Buddha was famous for being thick-skinned and black-hearted. The fact that Neza had killed White Xiong might not be enough to provoke him into accepting the challenge. Beware of any tricks, or the other party trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. Yin Zhaoge said, "That's why I came to inform you as soon as you came out of seclusion. Let's discuss the rules together." Xue Chuqing smiled and said, "Fortunately, you came out of seclusion before this battle began, so you wouldn't have missed it." Yin Zhaoge glanced at Feng Yunsheng, sighing, "I suddenly feel that it's also not good. Let's deal with fellow Taoist Neza first." Feng Yunsheng smiled at him and said, "As you said, the battle with the ancient Dipankara Buddha might not be that simple." Yin Zhaoge glanced at her exasperatedly before saying, "Since time is tight, let's talk on the way." A battle between Golden Immortal Realm experts, especially the top figures amongst them, was undoubtedly a grand event, and it had enormous reference value to others. Even if Yin Zhaoge and the others weren't here to support Neza, and were merely spectators, they wouldn't miss it. However, even a grand virtual immortal would find it difficult to watch the battle between grand heavenly realm experts. Even though Xue Chuqing and Yuan Zhengfeng yearned to hear it, they did not have the strength to do so. They could only wait for the capable spectators to return and tell them about it. While Yin Zhaoge, Yin Di, and Su Fei weren't grand heavenly realm, they were capable of spectating the battle. However, as the current sect leader, Su Fei still decided to stay. At this moment, the ancient Dipankara Buddha sighed and appeared in front of Neza. The Buddha's palm that was spinning with the swastika symbol seemed slow, but was actually fast. It blurred time and space and attacked Neza. Neza snorted coldly, and was not afraid at all. A head and 2 arms appeared on his shoulder, showing the appearance of 2 heads and 4 arms. The fire-tipped spear in his hand also split from 1 to 2. On one hand, he dealt with the attack of the sea-calming pearl, while on the other hand, he raised the tip of the spear. He did not dodge, and directly stabbed the swastika symbol in the Buddha's palm. The ancient Dipankara Buddha cared about himself. How would he be willing to fight with Neza in close combat? The Buddha's palm was stabbed by Neza's fire-tipped spear, and instantly shattered into a ball of golden flames. Even the body of the Dipankara Buddha, which was also made of flames, also exploded at this moment, and turned into a vast sea of flames. As the fire wave swallowed and spat, it burned the heavens and earth, instantly covering the entire temple. Everything seemed to be ignited by the golden flames, and turned into its fuel. Even the fire-tipped spear in Neza's hand, and the wind-fire wheels under his feet seemed to be engulfed by it. Outside the sea of flames, the real ancient Dipankara Buddha stared at Neza. Behind this ancient Buddha's head, in the perfect Buddha light, there were 3 lights, 1 purple, 1 gold and 1 gray, shining at the same time. The most famous treasure and method of the ancient Dipankara Buddha was the sea-calming pearl that he obtained from the prime clear bigwig Zhao Gongming. As a result, some people felt that without the sea-calming pearl, the ancient Dipankara Buddha was not worth mentioning. This was not unreasonable. In fact, the sea-calming pearl was indeed the most powerful weapon of the ancient Dipankara Buddha. However, even without the sea-calming pearl, the ancient Dipankara Buddha's strength was also one of the few bigwigs of the Buddhism. At this moment he exerted his full strength. The golden lights flickered, and the terrifying sea of flames destroyed the heavens and earth. Even a real universe was no different from a piece of paper in front of such power. However, a bit of light suddenly lit up in the surging flames. This bit of red light forcefully pierced through the sea of flames, causing a hole to appear in the golden sky. In terms of understanding towards Neza, the father and son weren't as knowledgeable as Yang Jian, who had been in the same sect as Neza for many years. If the ancient Dipankara Buddha's sea-calming pearls were still intact, junior apprentice brother Neza wouldn't have a high chance of winning against him in the Western Pure Lands. Yang Jian said. However, the ancient Dipankara Buddha's sea-calming pearls aren't complete. If he uses them separately, he might not be able to tell. However, if he focuses on defense, there might be a flaw. Of course, normal people wouldn't be able to grasp this flaw. However, junior apprentice brother Neza can try. Hearing Yang Jian's words, Yendi asked, "Do we have to wait for the ancient Dipankara Buddha to focus on defense before we can grasp the opportunity?" "That's right," Yang Jian answered. "Neza's technique requires some conditions to be fulfilled." Yen Zhaoga and Yendi nodded slightly. It wasn't that Neza would definitely be able to defeat his enemies. However, as long as the Dipankara Buddha couldn't defend to the end, even with the Blessed Land's Buddha Light's support, victory or defeat would still be uncertain. Neza still had a chance. "Then, what are you worried about?" asked Yen Zhaoga. Although Yang Jian said so, his gaze became more and more solemn. "I feel like something's wrong." Yang Jian observed the battle situation and said thoughtfully, "Neza is getting more and more impatient. Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case." Yen Zhaoga and Yendi frowned. Based on Yang Jian's cultivation level and his understanding of Neza, this feeling was most likely not groundless. However, since Neza had the confidence to deal with the ancient Dipankara Buddha's defense, why would he be impatient? Due to the geographical advantage, the ancient Dipankara Buddha was more advantageous in terms of attrition. However, the battle had just started not long ago. This advantage wasn't apparent yet. Although Neza had an unyielding temperament, he was experienced in battles. Logically speaking, he wouldn't blindly advance. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.